If you work in a corporation or business, particularly a large one, don't you think it's really important that you know how it really works as opposed how they tell you it works? Because this impacts your life and your career. Hello, my name is Michael Denisoff, and this is Work Trauma, how corporations really work. I've dedicated my whole life to helping organizations perform better and have great and robust cultures. On tonight's program, I share why this podcast is really important to you and why it's important to me to share this with you. Because Lord knows we spend way too much time at work, so it's got to be really good. All right, so let's talk about this. All right. Really, the purpose of this podcast, like I said, is to give you insights into how business works. So many times, as a business executive, as a consultant, I talk to employees and they think they know how it works, or they picture how it works, or they think that their textbooks from a business class or their MBA program says how it works. And it's really the case. So I want to give you an actual account, at least from my point of view, how organizations, like I said, particularly large organizations, how they actually work. So you can actually navigate your career and hopefully, improve your leadership and be a better asset to the organization. I really kind of reject, the internal communications department or the PR department in companies. They'll produce these brilliant, beautiful videos about how the organization is this and that. And it doesn't really work like that, or when you see an executive on one of the business channels talking about their organizations, how they're tapping into the heart and they're empowering their employees. And that's really not how it works. It sounds great. And some organizations do it, to be fair, but most organizations don't do it like that. So my thought is, let's bring more transparency into see how organizations to work. Again, this is ultimately so you can make better career decisions, navigate an organization, and in my heart of heart, so you can help organizations be better by being a change agent and a better leader. All right. I love this. This is my passion. All right. I was talking to a coaching client one time, and we were going through the setup of what the coaching was going to be like. And this was a big time executive. And as I kind of set the stage and told him how we were going to do it, the first words out of his mouth was, "Listen, we all have work trauma." And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true. We all have had work trauma. The work trauma where you do something at work and you're trying to do the right thing and you get in trouble for it, or you see things that just isn't copacetic. So I've seen it. I experienced myself. All the people, or most to all of the people I've ever consulted to, been executive coach to, they talk about these things. And some of the stories you can't make up. They are that bad. Some of them you probably heard on my podcast in past episodes, and you'll hear more about them in future episodes, which is a shame. And I feel strong about this because we spend so much time at the office, right? Or at work, even if we're at working from home. We spend a lot of time at work. Matter of fact, you could argue the majority of our time is spent at work. We work with our workmates and our fellow employees, and we see them often more than we see our very families. So we have to make sure we're being honest about how organizations work so we can make them better. And the reality is most corporations haven't really kept their promises in terms of making the organizations run well and treating their employees well, right? If you listen to one of my podcasts about the great comeuppance, a precursor to the great resignation, you'll hear how this has happened. Corporations are not healthy places. There's low engagement. And the easiest way I can show this or illustrate this would be if you ever go to a corporate town hall, that's an hour long or an hour and a half long. There'll be 70 slides on finance, 70 slides on marketing, 50 slides on product development. And just at the very end, when you're running out of time, there's that one slide from HR about people, right? And that shows that organizations really haven't lived up to their commitment, which causes a lot of the, quote, work trauma. So, as a business leader, executive, and as well as a consultant, really globally across this world, my mission has always been, like I said, to help companies perform better, to get them out of the rut, to go to the next level, right? Do the J-curve jump, whatever you want to call it, and part of that would not only be the performance today, but also making sure that the company could perform tomorrow. So that means that they had healthy cultures and robust cultures where people liked to come to work. Engagement was high, development was high. And that's what I do. And a part of the success that I have had, particularly when it comes to um, issues or challenges in the company, is doing three things. And the first thing would be you just kind of call it out. You have to call things out that aren't right. As Dr. Phil would say, to solve a problem, you have to admit there's a problem, right? So I believe by identifying or naming these issues, it takes away their power. Okay. And I think that's a big start for a lot of organizations. Let's just be honest about it, name it, and then part of that too is let's laugh at it. Let's laugh at ourselves. We all have been imperfect, right? Most people don't do nefarious things, but organizations have become mean and toxic often, not because it's nefarious always. Sometimes it just kind of happens that way. So we would be able to laugh at ourselves. And also, you want to name it, because when you name it, people are going to be less likely to do it because they could call you out on it. So, big part of my career has been naming that which is really bad or toxic or ugly in organizations. Number two, my job is to kind of do co-work and co-create with organizations about coming in with potential integrated and holistic solutions to make things better. So I just don't want to be a cynic on this stinks, company sucks. I don't like that. Okay, so if that's true, then what can we do about it? So how do we come up with solutions? So I've had a lot of fortune of co-creating and sometimes creating my own very good solutions for organizations to get better. And then thirdly, how do we remove the barriers to make this happen? And often we know the drivers, we know what to do, but it's the barriers that really stop good change and corporate change. And then if we don't make that change, or if the change is just fleeting, or if there's a ban and there's a handout of t-shirts, it kind of goes back to what it was, which is very toxic, right? And that's why we're seeing a lot of the things in this world today, the anti-work movement, right? Because in the old days, you had to go to work. You were like, you're lucky to have this job. Now it's like, we're lucky if you come and work for us. So things have changed. So this is an important time for us to kind of look at what's really going on and make the necessary changes. All right. So why is it this important to me? This podcast is I'm very passionate about it, very important to me for a few reasons. One is, you know, when I think about the big picture of life and impacting the world, I always think that business is one of the most important things for change and positive change in our world. And so, and this started really with me with working with leaders and managers in particular. And I always thought to myself, a manager generally, let's say they have, I don't know, 10 direct reports, right? That's a lot, but let's say they have 10. So it's good. It's a good round number. If they have 10 direct reports, and let's say the average home has, a spouse and 2.8 kids, we'll round it up to 3. All of a sudden, that manager, right, or that leader is impacting not just the 10 people that work for them, but they're three in their household, 40 lives, give or take. It might be a little less, maybe a little bit more, but they're impacting those lives. So think about when you had a really, really good leader, really good manager, not perfect, but a good one. Even if the work was hard or the job got tough, you kind of enjoyed it. You were growing, you were being mentored, you were being challenged, you were getting feedback, and when you come home from work, you know what? You're still kind of energized. So that means you could be a good neighbor, be a good husband, be a good wife, be a good parent, be a good neighbor, do things in your community because you still have energy. But the converse is also true, right? If you had a bad leader, right, and just made work awful, didn't develop you, treated you poorly, what do you do when you come home? You want to get a scotch and watch Sports Center. You want to see your kids or your wife. Forget it. So it was early on, I thought, man, making sure we have good leadership throughout an organization changes the world. Okay. Now it's a little Pollyanna-ish, but I think it's true. All right. Also, I remember early on in my career, and I'm pretty sure it was still when I was still working for Stephen Covey, and I was teaching a 7 Habits program, I believe. I'll never forget out there. I remember at a break, I was talking to all these managers for this one organization. They were just beautiful, bright, great people. And I brought them back from break, and they came in. And I looked out at them. And they were kind of tired and beat up. They were just kind of dragged down by the organization itself. And even though they had a lot to offer, the organization wasn't getting it out of them. It wasn't really treating them right. And again, I wanted to do things that made going to work positive. Again, not perfect, not Pollyanna-ish, but made it better so people could be excited about coming to work. So the right things happen at work. So, a lot of what I do when I would go, particularly as a consultant organization, I would say things about organizations and what they struggle with. And just about every organization would say, "Hey, that's us." I'm like, "No, hey, that's every organization." The problems in organizations seem to be the same. Now they'll have stylistically they'll be different. The magnitude might be different, but the cookie dough is the same. The sprinkles, the chocolate chips, the nuts you put in it are a little different, but they're generally the same issues over and over. And yet we've had 40 years of leadership development classes and all these great programs, and corporations are still kind of struggling and again become very toxic places for a variety of reasons. And a lot of it, if you guys know me, I'm very tough on the CEOs and executives in general. CEOs, because everything starts at the top. Or, I would say in the consulting field, baloney runs downhill, right? Or my 83-year-old Italian mother would say, the fish rots from the head down. So I'm particularly hard on CEOs because they set the tone. They have the ability to set the tone and do it right. But too many CEOs and executives are worried about protectionism and preservation. They're more worried about their job and keeping what they have, the big salaries, the car, the deferred comp, and actually helping the organization out. So their job doesn't, even though if the organization was successful, that would be the best preservation. They become very, very tight, very, very close when things don't go right. Instead of getting better, it's about making sure they keep the job, which usually means blaming somebody else. So I'm very hard on that. Another example of why organizations seem to be toxic, in so many times as I worked with organizations, I would get the same comment, which was, man, working in this organization is like in high school. There's kind of cliques, there's the cool people, there's bad people. You never know what's going to happen. The principal might come out. That sounds awful. It sounds a low bar. So who wants to go back to high school when you're an adult? And so why do we have these kind of trends we see in organizations? And like I said before, I think one of the worst things in terms of, for me personally, some of the more traumatic things came out when I stayed late. I went above and beyond. I produced great work. And I got punched in the stomach by somebody because they're like, well, who do you think you are to do that? Well, it's good work, right? Yeah, it is. But who told you to do that? Clearly they were going to get credit for it. So they were pissed at me. So how many times have you done the right thing at work? Have you really tried to go above and beyond and you get kicked in the gut? It's a terrible feeling for sure. Um, yeah, again, there's so many examples of this. The other thing, another pet peeve of mine that I see in organizations, isn't it weird that almost always you see the wrong people promoted? We're going to have a whole podcast on this, but isn't it weird that you see the wrong people promoted over and over again? You know, and it hurts. And then that cumulative effects ruins the organization. And then, of course, last thought on that. Um, most organizations, when I work with them, the people, even the executives will tell me they're running on 2 or 3 of the 8 cylinders. So imagine that. The majority of organizations are working on half of the cylinders. They're being so less productive because so much time is wasted on, frivolous activity or negative activity or controlling activity. An organization should be really kind of kicking into high gear and getting the best out of their people, which, by the way, everybody talks about doing, but very few organizations do. So I think, yeah, yeah, I don't think anybody deserves that. And by the way, very few people deny it in their organizations, but we want to make sure we help change them. So, like I said, I've seen this, I've lived it. By the way, I've been in the inner circle, and it's a scary place. Even though it's safe, you think it's a scary place. I've seen what it's like. I've seen the organizations, how they really work. It's not all nefarious for sure, but my job is to make sure you have a really good insight to what really goes on, so you can plan accordingly and make your life the way you want about it to do it. Because in the end, I do believe in the dignity of work. I like to work hard. Most people I knew like to work hard, and they take great pride in their work, right? And then it's just crazy to me that so many organizations smash that and beat that down, and put people in boxes and control people when they're professing to do the opposite. So I want work to be a place where people can be energized, can contribute. Yeah, I want today's workforce just to be better. We know from tons of surveys with people that when it comes to work, money is down here, right? In fact, I was working this is years ago when I first consulting. I was working at a tech company in Silicon Valley, and it was a very toxic company, And yeah, I mean, it was just awful. They're yelling at each other. We're talking. It's just terrible. And of course, I'm there with my little slide that says, "When it comes to work, money is fourth, behind wanting to make an impact, a positive impact, ability to grow and learn, and a healthy work environment." That's where money was. And they said, "Baloney, that's not true." And they went off on me. And I'm like, man, I don't know what to say. This is what the surveys are saying, and they seem they're peer reviewed. I think this is right. And they're like, "Oh no, it's terrible. That's crap. I don't believe that." And then it kind of hit me. If the first three things don't exist, all that matters is the money, right? And that's why if you ever have somebody who's leaving a company and the company wants them to stay, they'll throw some money at them, and they generally last only 6 months longer because the company's not really feeding them. So we want to make sure we turn this stuff around. And the news, I don't want to say all companies, particularly large companies, are the most offenders. I see a lot of positive things, particularly small and mid-sized companies. They do it well. Not perfect, but they do it much better. They're not all perfect, but the good news, and there's some bigger companies who are trying to get there, but there is a lot of toxicity and a lot of work trauma for all of us. So again, I go back to, so what do we do? Well, I do what I did in my career. When we do this podcast, we do it. I call it out so we can make fun of it. We could shame the bad behavior. We can get rid of it. We got to come up with potential solutions, and not every solution will work for every company, right? Every company's got to figure it out, but we'll generate some different ideas for you to talk about it. And then we got to remove the barriers to keep it from happening. And a lot of those barriers, quite frankly, are people in power or just an old paradigm of how work is. So we'll talk a lot about that. So you can really go into your organization. So you can pick the right company, one you want to work for. You can manage your career. You can become a better leader. And like I said, become the change agent to make sure these companies are great places to work. Not perfect places to work, but great places to work. And that's really the purpose of work trauma, exposing how corporations really work. I look forward to see you in future episodes or past episodes. Feel free to reach out with any questions, because I love answering questions, particularly tough questions. If you disagree with me, great. I don't know all the answers, but if you're going to disagree, please come up with some facts, some logic, some data, and we can talk about that. And then thirdly, it's going to be good for us to kind of laugh at this stuff and then move forward with it. And I think that's the purpose of it. So I look forward to hanging out with you and taking on more and more subjects as we go on. Thank you.